Hello and welcome back. We are continuing our MySQL series. We've taken a little bit of time off here, took a break, but now we're diving back in. And this episode, I want to look at indexes. We've not really talked too much about them. We've just sort of mentioned them in passing. And so for this case, I have a new table that I've created, and there will be SQL out there because it has a lot of rows. If we go back to, let's go show our tables. In doing so, we can see we've got, sort of our traditional tables. Actually, let me do this. It's been so long, I'd forgotten my other ID, but that's okay. Okay, so now you can see our tables, and there's a new one here called horses. Now, if you remember, let me see, actually, I think I'm just going to do an ID from horses. I'm going to see how many rows I've got to show you that, okay, we got 350,000 rows. And so it takes a second, actually 0.109 seconds to make that call. Whoops. I want to do a little brief thing. There we go. Or once it's in there, we can just do a count star. Now, if we look at horses, it's got a bunch of different columns. Now, right now, we have on the ID, we do have a primary key set up, and we do have on name, we do have an index, which is this, we have a multi-key index set up on name. So we'll look at those a little bit first. How do you create an index? Well, you're going to create an index by using the phrase, using create index, and then you're going to give it an index name, what table, and then what column. So if I wanted to, and let's start with this. We're going to work from dam and sire, so they're mother and father. So let's we'll just do this one. This might take a second. Let's select distinct dam from horses. And we're going to limit it to like 100. Oh, goes that way. So let's look at supermiss. Now for these today, we're going to look, this little part here, particularly that thing in parentheses, is going to be key because this is essentially how fast it ran. Now there are other ways to get into this, but just to show you from a high level point of view, the effect of indexes or indices, then we're going to take a look at that. So now let's do select star from horses where dam equals supermiss. So there we go. So we only got 2 horses. It took us 0.413 seconds. That's a little bit of time. That's almost half a second to figure this one out. And this is for one row. So let's see what happens when we create an index. Let's remember that's create index. And we're going to give it a name. So let's call this dam name. Actually, we're going to use it horses dam name on horses. Now, typically what you want to do, it depends on where you're at, but for the most part, your index name should be unique, even though when we disable them, when we delete them, we'll see that we use a table name, but it helps to do that. It's just easier when you're doing debugging because you'll be able to see stuff where, particularly when you look into performance tuning and such, you'll be able to see which index is being used specifically. So if I create an index, it didn't take too long in this case. Sometimes it can take a while to build an index depending on how big the table is. But as you see here, it took us a little over half a second. So now let's go back to that prior call that we made. And now it's coming back in 0.01 seconds. It's coming back instantly, basically, because it's using this index. So now if we do the same thing with sire, where is that? Let's get the distinct sire. And then, oh, actually, let's just go back to that one. There we go. So here the sire is speedster. So now if we use that, so we're going to get that same row where sire equals. And now granted, took a little bit. So let's do, let's find some more about that. Let's say and breeder ID equals 21. So we're going to add a little bit more. And breeder equals 28169. Oh, breeder ID, my mistake. So now we're back to that 0.41 seconds. Now, if we did same thing, and actually we'll keep some of these. Well, I'll allow you guys to do your own little selects. So now if we do the same thing, and we do dam equals super miss. Now we get it back super fast, no pun intended, because it's going to pick up, because that name's in there. This is where this MySQL engine is smart. Now, most modern databases are like this. Some are not. If you go back to older versions, it basically just looks for an index here and then stops when it doesn't find it, or will look for a combo index, in which case you're going to find something that's going to be, it's going to take a little bit longer. Now, let's do, to show a multi-column index. So let's go back to here. So here's where we have that breeder ID. Now it's coming back pretty quick because it's cached right now, because we've already seen this exact query. So now if we do it with, and we've already done this one. So let's change up, let's do breeder ID here, and let's see if we can get a different sire. Oh, he's only got one. Let's see if we can get just go off by one. See, there we go. So we've got something a little different. Now it takes a little bit to find this one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do this one where sire equals Jess's dream. Whoop. And we're going to see it's going to take, oh, shoot. My mistake, because it doesn't like that. I'm going to have to, let's just change, let's change that whole thing up. Oh, sorry. Tutorial. And then let's go back and let's pick 65. Let's see if that gives us something. No, 64. No, 63. Oh, come on, give me a breeder ID. 62. There we go. Okay, so there we got one. And this is going to be, so now if we do, well, let's do a couple, because I want to see. Well, let's do where, let's go off of, well, let's see. I think I have my name already in there. So if I do where name equals strong eagle, yeah, so I already have a name index in there. It's going to be hard to show this, but let's go in there and create a multi-column index. So let's say that we want to see, now we already have dam in there, but what we could do is, let's say we want to find a breeder what would this be? That would be an owner-breeder combo. Let's say we're going to search on that a lot. So in that case, it's pretty easy to do. We're going to do create index horse breeder owner, and you can call it whatever you want basically, on horses, and then just give it a list of the IDs. So we're going to do owner ID, comma, breeder ID. Took us a little over half a second. And so now if I do select star from horses, where owner ID equals 126448 and breeder ID equals 28162, it's going to come back pretty much instantly. Boom. So it's going to use both of those. Now, if I do let's say I go back to owner ID. So that's, I've got to have those combos. So now if I go pick, let's just pick a, there. It still came back pretty quick because it's probably looking at that without the breeder ID. This is where MySQL, well, the database engines in general are getting sort of smart. So if there's an index that's useful, then it's going to be able to do it. So now I'm also probably going to see if I come back with breeder ID of, let's just pick some number. Let's see if it comes back. It's an empty set. It did take a while because it's breeder ID. But if I did owner ID, if I do owner ID equals, and let's just do an empty set again. So let's do this guy and breeder ID. Oh, shoot. Breeder ID. And breeder ID equals this, yeah. It comes back pretty quick because it's hitting the, here, it's not hitting a index at all. Here, it's trying to hit an index. It's saying, I don't have that. So that disappears pretty quick. So same thing if I do where owner ID and I don't give it here because I just, so that was just in there. So let's give it like a different number. Whoop. Well, let's try that. It's going to come back too quick because it's too out of the range. It's probably going to come back super fast now anyways. Oh, there it was. But it's still, it's hitting because you're looking at index. And it's going to, I guess because of the first column, it's going to pick that up. This is where how a database uses an index can be, it varies from database, and it can take a little bit of work to figure out what index is being used and how it's being used. So for example, now you don't want to overly index something, but you could have an index on, in this case, breeder, but also an index on breeder owner. You probably don't really need that, but there's some cases where, like for example, it would only use one of those if that's the ID in there. Now we have one for name and breeder, so we could come in and let's see how that works. So if we do name equals, and it's probably going to find whichever is the fastest. So name is Turalura, and let's say owner ID equals, we did and dam. That's what we had before, and dam equals. So these are both. We have indexes for both of these, and it's going to come back pretty quick, but you don't really know, in this case, which one it's hitting. Now also, just to show how these things have changed, we can see here that name has an index, dam has an index, and owner has an index, and that's what that key is. Then there's some other things you can do. I think we've talked about, like you can make them unique and things of that nature, but even here, now granted, if you've got 10 rows in a database, which is why I grabbed this one, I just threw this thing in there because I wanted something that had more than, a few rows, because you're not going to see those time differences. But this, we were seeing half a second versus a tenth, or what is that, a thousandth of a second differences, which is, almost instantaneous versus half a second or almost half a second with 300,000 rows. Now, if you start to move up with, a million rows or tens of millions of rows, and then start joining tables based on that, it can take quite a while. So if I were to, let's say, create table owners as select owner ID, comma, let's just get something here, comma, sire from horses. It's going to take a second. And so now I've got 300,000 in rows there. So now if I do select star from horses, let's just do this. Let's do owners dot sire from horses, inner join owners on horses dot owner ID equals owners dot owner ID, where let's see, owner ID equal, well, let's say where sire equals idiot proof, I think is one. We're going to see, oh, it's ambiguous, so let's do based on owners dot sire. Okay, so it took, it wasn't too bad. It came back moderately quickly. If I do, well, probably this is going to be super fast now. If I do horses dot sire, oh, well, there you go. Oh, because owners have nothing to do with that. So, okay, so this again, it's taking a little bit because we're joining on this ID that does have an index in horses, right? Yeah, it does have an index in horses, but it doesn't on the other table. So if we take the same thing and let's create, can I do that real quick? So if we create table breeders the same way, select breeder ID from horses. Now we don't have any index here on either table. And then we come in and we do select breeders.sire from horses, or even let's say from breeders, from breeders, inner join horses on horses.breeder ID equals breeders.breeder ID. What did I do? Oh, from. It's all the way back here. It's not form. It should be from. There we go. That's going to take us. Now, look, it's taken a while because we don't have any indexes set up. So now, since we're doing this search across a lot of records, 300,000, well, 350,000 times 350,000, it's going to take it a little bit. And that puts us basically at the end of this lesson because this thing will not finish, I bet, before I do. So what we've covered today is indexes, and we're going to do some more playing around with stuff next time around. But until then, go out there and have yourself a great day, a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Yep, it is still running.